I first met Rachel during my freshman year of university. It was one of those crisp autumn days, where the air felt fresh with possibility, and the campus was alive with the energy of students just beginning to find their way. I remember the exact moment I saw her. She was standing in the middle of the quad, talking animatedly with a group of friends, her laughter ringing out above the bustle of the crowd. There was something about her, something magnetic. She had this effortless charm, a confidence that drew people in, and before I knew it, I was walking up to introduce myself. We clicked instantly. From that very first conversation, it felt like we had known each other for years. She was sharp, witty, and ambitious, with big dreams that matched my own. We spent hours talking about our goals and our plans for the future, sharing ideas and challenging each other's perspectives. It was intoxicating, the way our minds seemed to sync up so easily, as if we were meant to be on this journey together from the start. At first, it was just friendship, though we both knew it would quickly become more. We were inseparable, studying together in the library until the early hours of the morning, grabbing late-night coffees at the campus cafe, and attending every lecture and every event side by side. It wasn't long before we were spending nearly every waking moment together. There was an undeniable chemistry between us, a connection that went beyond the superficial. She understood me in ways no one else had, and I felt the same about her. Rachel had this incredible ability to inspire those around her. She pushed me to think bigger, to aim higher. When I doubted myself, she was the one who reminded me of my potential and encouraged me to take risks, to go after what I wanted. She believed in me in an almost overwhelming way, and it made me want to be better, not just for myself, but for her. We were both ambitious and hungry for success, and together, we felt unstoppable. University was our testing ground, the place where we honed our skills, built our confidence, and dreamed of the life we would build together. We didn't just see ourselves as a couple, we were a team. We talked about starting businesses, traveling the world, and making our mark on the industries we were so passionate about. It wasn't just about love, it was about partnership, about building something real and lasting. By the time we graduated, we had been through so much together. Late nights studying for exams, the stress of balancing part-time jobs and internships, and the excitement of landing our first real jobs. Every victory felt like a shared accomplishment, every setback just another hurdle we would overcome together. We knew how to lean on each other, and how to navigate life's challenges as a unit. There were moments, especially in the early years, when it felt like we had everything. We were young and full of potential, standing at the edge of our lives with nothing but possibility stretching out before us. We moved into our first apartment shortly after graduation. A tiny one-bedroom place with creaky floors and terrible plumbing, but it felt like a palace to us. It was ours, the first step in building the life we had always dreamed about. We decorated that place together, piecing together mismatched furniture from thrift stores and hand-me-downs from family. It didn't matter that the couch was old or that the dining table had seen better days. What mattered was that we were doing it together. Every corner of that apartment was filled with memories, late-night takeout sprawled on the floor, laughing until our sides hurt, brainstorming sessions where we planned our future businesses, quiet mornings spent sipping coffee and reading the news, side by side. Our relationship wasn't perfect, no relationship ever is, but it was real. We fought, of course. There were times when the pressure of school, work, and life got to us, when we argued about little things that, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter. But no matter how intense the argument, we always found our way back to each other. We always knew that we were in it for the long haul, and that whatever challenges came our way, we would face them together. Looking back now, it's hard to believe how fast those early years flew by. They were filled with so much joy and so much excitement for the future. We were two kids who believed we could conquer the world, and who thought that as long as we had each other, nothing could stand in our way. And for a long time, that felt true. We were so wrapped up in each other, so focused on our goals, that it felt like the world outside didn't matter. But as the years passed, things began to shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the relationship that had once been filled with so much passion and energy started to feel different. We started to drift, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when or how it began. The routines that had once brought us comfort now felt stifling. The dreams we had shared started to diverge. It wasn't that we stopped loving each other, that was never the issue. But life has a way of pulling people in different directions, of testing even the strongest bonds. Still, for those first few years, it felt like we had everything. We were a team, a partnership, a force to be reckoned with. And for a time, that was enough. Our university years were not just about Rachel and me, they were enriched by a tight-knit circle of friends who became our chosen family. Among them was my best friend, Mike, a man I considered a brother. We met in our first year, both fresh-faced and eager to take on the world. From that moment on, we became inseparable. We were two sides of the same coin, navigating the highs and lows of university life together. Mike was the kind of person who brought energy to every room he walked into. With his quick wit and contagious laugh, he had a way of making even the most mundane situations feel exciting. Whether we were cramming for exams, sharing late-night pizza, or talking about our dreams for the future, Mike was always at the center of it all. He had this uncanny ability to uplift everyone around him, and his support for both Rachel and me was unwavering. The three of us often spent our weekends together, embarking on spontaneous adventures or simply lounging at home, binge-watching our favorite shows. Mike would come over with his usual enthusiasm, bringing snacks and jokes that would make us laugh until our stomachs hurt. He had a talent for turning even the simplest moments into unforgettable memories. Those nights felt sacred, as if we were carving out a space in the world where laughter and friendship reigned supreme. Rachel and Mike also developed a close bond over the years. They would share inside jokes, exchange text messages, and collaborate on various projects. It was heartwarming to see how they connected, each pushing the other to strive for greatness. I appreciated their friendship and never thought much of it. To me, it was just another aspect of our lives, a testament to the camaraderie we had built together. I trusted Mike completely and considered Rachel a part of that trust, so it never crossed my mind that there could be anything unusual about their relationship. As the years went by, we celebrated milestones together. We threw a huge party when Mike landed his first internship, and Rachel and I cheered him on as he navigated the challenges of his new role. In turn, he was there for us during our moments of triumph, celebrating our achievements as if they were his own. He was an unwavering pillar of support, a confidant, and a cheerleader all rolled into one. However, as I reflect on those days, I can see how easily the lines between friendship and something deeper could blur. I remember the laughter, the camaraderie, and the warmth of our little trio. But I also recall those fleeting moments when Mike and Rachel would share a look, a connection that felt electric, but one I dismissed as just the joy of friendship. I chalked it up to their shared interests and the bond they had formed over time. The more time we spent together, the more I noticed that Rachel and Mike seemed to gravitate toward one another, often huddled in conversations filled with laughter while I occupied myself with something else. It was innocent enough, a casual banter that was all in good fun. Yet, there were times when a part of me wondered if their connection was a little too close for comfort. But I brushed off those thoughts, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Trust was the cornerstone of our friendship, and I had no reason to doubt either of them. As the pressures of post-graduation life began to mount, our group of friends became a crucial support system. We faced the uncertainty of job hunting, the stress of financial independence, and the challenges of forging our paths in a world that felt increasingly complex. Mike, ever the optimist, was there to lighten the mood, suggesting we take weekend trips to unwind or have movie marathons to distract us from the chaos of our new realities. Yet, as I became more immersed in my work and the grind of adulthood, I noticed subtle shifts in Rachel's behavior. It wasn't drastic, it was more like a gradual fade. The laughter we once shared seemed to wane, and there were times when she would glance at her phone during our get-togethers, a shadow of distraction crossing her face. Mike, on the other hand, remained as upbeat as ever, throwing himself into his projects and encouraging us all to join him for nights out or impromptu gatherings. In those moments, I should have paid more attention to the dynamics at play. But I was caught up in my world, focused on building my career and trying to navigate the complexities of adulthood. The last thing I wanted to do was scrutinize their friendship. I trusted them both implicitly. They had been there for me during my lowest moments and had celebrated my successes as if they were their own. I had always believed that friendships, no matter how close, were built on trust, and I thought I had that in spades. As Rachel and I began to drift into our routines, I held on to the hope that our connection could withstand the pressures of life. I wanted to believe that the bonds we had forged in those early years were strong enough to weather any storm. Little did I know that the very friendship I cherished would soon become a focal point of tension and uncertainty. Despite the subtle signs, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything would be okay. After all, we had shared so much together. As the sun set on our university years and we stepped into the world of adulthood, I hoped that the love, trust, and camaraderie we had built would guide us through whatever lay ahead. I wanted to believe that nothing could come between us, but life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges in our path. Challenges I had yet to face. Lately, I had begun to notice little things that set off alarm bells in my mind. It started subtly at first, an uncharacteristic distance from Rachel that I couldn't quite put my finger on. She had always been open and candid with me, but now she seemed more secretive. Her phone was suddenly always locked, a new development that felt odd after years of sharing everything, from silly memes to our most intimate thoughts. It was as if a wall had slowly begun to rise between us, one that I couldn't see but could feel. At first, I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that she was simply busy with work or perhaps just needed some space. But the frequency of her outings with friends began to raise my eyebrows. She would often mention spontaneous plans with her girlfriends, nights out filled with laughter, and late-night confessions. I wanted to be supportive, to encourage her friendships, but there was something about the timing of these outings that felt off. They seemed to coincide too perfectly with my plans, leaving me feeling sidelined as if she had chosen to prioritize her social life over our time together. Then there was Mike. The sudden shifts in his behavior were equally puzzling. It was as if he was avoiding me, slipping away from conversations just as they began to get deep, leaving me feeling isolated in my concerns. I would catch him casting quick, almost guilty glances at Rachel when he thought I wasn't looking, a silent exchange that spoke volumes. I found myself analyzing every interaction, replaying conversations in my mind, trying to decipher what lay beneath the surface. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. Late at night, when the house was quiet and Rachel was asleep, I would lie awake, thoughts racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. My instincts told me that their relationship had transformed somehow, that it had evolved beyond the realm of friendship. I began to second-guess myself, wondering if I was being paranoid or if there was indeed something to my suspicions. I wanted to trust Rachel, but trust only went so far when doubt began to creep in. It was a dark cloud hovering over our relationship, growing denser by the day. One evening, after an especially long day, I returned home to find Rachel in a good mood, chatting animatedly about her day as if nothing were wrong. But instead of feeling relieved, I was consumed by the gnawing need for clarity. I had been wrestling with my suspicions for too long, and they were weighing heavily on my heart. When she stepped out of the room, leaving her phone on the coffee table, I felt a rush of adrenaline and guilt. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but my instincts urged me to take a peek. With trembling hands, I reached for her phone, my heart racing as I unlocked it. The screen lit up, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. What I found was a lengthy exchange between Rachel and Mike that sent my world spiraling. They had been in constant communication, their messages filled with laughter, inside jokes, and a familiarity that made my skin crawl. My worst fears were realized. Their relationship was far deeper than mere friendship. I scrolled through the messages, my heart pounding in my chest. I read words that should have belonged to us, expressions of affection that felt like daggers to my heart. They shared secrets, dreams, and moments that should have been ours, and it felt as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I was devastated. Every message I read confirmed my fears and shattered the trust I had placed in both of them. I felt nauseous as I realized that this wasn't just a casual flirtation, this was something serious. Something that had been brewing beneath the surface for months, if not longer. They were sharing a connection that I thought was exclusive to Rachel and me, and the betrayal cut deep. It was like a punch to the gut, knocking the breath from my lungs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and yet, part of me had known all along. The signs were there, I just hadn't wanted to see them. As I put the phone down, a storm of emotions surged within me: anger, sadness, betrayal, and disbelief. I felt like a fool for not recognizing the truth sooner, for allowing myself to be so blind to what was happening right in front of me. I took a moment to breathe, to process the reality that had just shattered my world. Rachel and Mike had crossed a line that I never thought they would, a line that had irrevocably altered the course of our lives. I knew I couldn't confront them just yet. I needed to collect my thoughts and figure out how I would navigate this new and painful territory. The image of the two of them together, laughing and sharing moments that should have been ours, replayed in my mind like a haunting melody. I was left feeling hollow, a mere shell of the person I had been just moments before. The trust I had built with Rachel, the bond we shared with Mike, felt like they had been swept away in an instant, leaving me standing alone in a world that suddenly felt cold and unfamiliar. As I lay in bed that night, my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and heartbreak. I felt like a storm was brewing within me, and I knew I had to confront this truth eventually. I couldn't allow this betrayal to fester any longer. It was time to face the music, to demand answers from Rachel and Mike. I just needed to find the strength to do it. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and reeling. I could hardly wrap my head around the reality that had just unfolded before me. Rachel, the woman I had loved deeply and shared my life with, had betrayed me most unimaginably. How could she, after everything we had been through together? The memories of our laughter, our dreams, and our intimate moments felt like shards of glass, cutting into me as I replayed them in my mind. Each happy memory transformed into a painful reminder of the trust that had been shattered. But the pain didn't stop there. My heart sank even further when I thought about Mike, my best friend, the man I had considered a brother. The betrayal felt like a double-edged sword, cutting not only through my relationship with Rachel but also severing the bond I had with him. It was a harrowing realization that the two people I had trusted the most had colluded against me, and I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. My mind raced with images of their shared moments, their laughter echoing in my ears like a cruel taunt. How could they both have done this? I felt completely hollow, as if the ground beneath my feet had given way. The world around me faded into a blur, the colors muted as shock enveloped me like a thick fog. I wanted to scream, to confront them right then and there. But a part of me knew that acting on my emotions would only lead to more heartache. I had to take a step back, to gather my thoughts before I confronted them. The last thing I wanted was to make a scene or say something I would regret in the heat of the moment. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. My thoughts were a whirlwind, each one more chaotic than the last. The pain was palpable, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I could feel the sting of tears threatening to spill. But I fought against it. I refused to let them see me break, to give them the satisfaction of knowing how much they had hurt me. I was determined to maintain some semblance of composure, at least until I could sort through the turmoil inside me. As I sat there in silence, the reality of my situation began to crystallize. I realized that I had two paths before me. I could either confront them head-on, fueled by anger and hurt, or I could take a more measured approach. I opted for the latter. In that moment of clarity, I understood that I needed to approach this situation with a level head. It wouldn't do me any good to lash out, and I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Instead, I focused on what I needed to do next. I had to gather information, to understand the depth of their betrayal before I made any decisions about how to proceed. I needed to confront Rachel, to hear her explanation, and to see if Mike would own up to his part in this heartbreaking saga. My heart ached with the thought of having to face them, but I knew I couldn't let fear or sorrow dictate my actions. The pain of betrayal felt like a wound that wouldn't heal, each thought stabbing at my heart. I envisioned confronting them, asking how they could do this to me. I imagined the responses I might get, the excuses they might offer, and how I would react. Would Rachel cry and beg for forgiveness, or would she try to justify her actions? Would Mike apologize, or would he deflect blame back onto me? The uncertainty gnawed at me, a bitter taste in my mouth. As I lay awake that night, the weight of shock and pain settled into the corners of my mind. I replayed the scenes from my life with Rachel and Mike, searching for signs I might have missed. Each laugh shared, every secret exchange, now felt tainted by the knowledge of their betrayal. The trust I had built with them was like a fragile glass, shattered into countless pieces. The pain was unbearable, yet I clung to the hope that I would find a way to navigate this dark chapter in my life. In the days that followed, I found myself oscillating between anger and despair. I would catch myself lost in thought, staring blankly at the walls as memories flooded my mind. The moments of joy that had defined our relationship now twisted into reminders of the heartbreak I was enduring. I wanted to confront Rachel and Mike, to demand answers, but the weight of my emotions felt like chains, binding me in place. I knew I needed to muster the courage to face them, to reclaim my power in this situation. It wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't allow their betrayal to define me. I had to remind myself of who I was before this heartbreak, to dig deep and find the strength to confront them. As I prepared for that inevitable moment, I realized that the healing journey would require more than just addressing the betrayal. It would demand that I reconnect with myself and rediscover my worth in the aftermath of their actions. With every passing day, I grew more resolved to face the truth head on. I couldn't let shock and pain control my narrative any longer. I would take charge of my story, no matter how painful it would be. I owed it to myself to confront Rachel and Mike, to seek closure, and to ultimately emerge stronger on the other side. In the aftermath of discovering Rachel's betrayal, a tempest of emotions swirled inside me: anger, hurt, confusion. Yet, amidst the chaos, a clearer thought began to form. I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my power and expose the truth without losing myself to impulsive rage. After wrestling with various ideas, I settled on a strategy that felt just. If Rachel wanted to play games with my heart, then she should face the consequences in a way that would sting. She would be publicly humiliated when the truth came to light. The idea took root as I considered the timing. Our anniversary was approaching, a day that had once filled me with joy but now felt tainted by betrayal. It was the perfect backdrop for my plan. Friends would gather for a celebratory dinner, and I envisioned creating a scene that would unearth the truth. I wanted Rachel to realize the gravity of her actions, not just in the private confines of our home but in front of the very people we held dear. The thought of her discomfort, her shock as everything unraveled before our friends, felt almost poetic, a kind of justice in my eyes. I began meticulously crafting the details of this revelation. Each step needed to be precise, ensuring that I wouldn't accidentally expose my hand before the moment arrived. I had to play my part convincingly, maintaining a facade of normalcy while orchestrating the elements of my plan. The thrill of revenge coursed through me, and I felt empowered by the thought of taking control of a situation that had once left me feeling powerless. For the next few weeks, I began laying the groundwork for my revelation. I casually nudged our friends, planting the seeds of suspicion and doubt in their minds. Little comments here and there, questions about Rachel's frequent outings, and my sudden mood shifts became my tools of manipulation. I carefully curated my interactions, ensuring that my tone remained light and playful, even as my mind churned with darker thoughts. Have you guys noticed how often Rachel's been going out lately? I would say, a casual grin masking the intent behind my words. My friends would chuckle and nod, brushing off my remarks, but I could see their curiosity peaking. It was all part of the game. I wanted them to start questioning her loyalty, to subtly encourage them to keep an eye on her. This would set the stage perfectly for what I had in mind. In our circles, Rachel was well loved. She had a knack for bringing people together, and I knew that when the truth came out, it would hit harder because they adored her. I couldn't wait for the moment when the air would crackle with tension, and the smiles would fade as the truth shattered the illusions we'd all been living under. Every time I saw Rachel, I would put on a mask of indifference, pretending everything was perfectly fine. I would smile at her, offer her kind words, and even initiate conversations about our anniversary plans. The more I acted as if nothing was amiss, the more I felt the thrill of my plan solidifying. It was a game, and I was determined to win. As the days crept closer to our anniversary dinner, I ramped up my efforts. I engaged our mutual friends in casual discussions about relationships and trust, sharing lighthearted anecdotes that had an underlying message. You know, trust is such a fragile thing. You think you know someone until you find out otherwise, I would say with a sardonic smile, watching their expressions carefully. I wanted to prime them for the revelation that would soon follow. The night of the dinner arrived, filled with the scent of good food and the sound of laughter. I played my role seamlessly, enjoying the festivities while my heart raced with anticipation. Every smile exchanged felt like a countdown to the moment I had so meticulously crafted. I could feel the tension building within me, the rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. As Rachel mingled with our friends, I caught glimpses of her carefree laughter, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I reminded myself of my goal, to expose the truth and watch as she faced the consequences of her actions. The moment she least expected it, I would pull back the curtain and let the truth shine through, illuminating the deception that had woven itself into our lives. With every passing minute, my heart pounded louder, urging me to stay focused. I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. The plan was in motion, and soon, everything would change. I knew that once the truth emerged, nothing would be the same, for Rachel, for Mike, or me. It was a reckoning I had orchestrated, and I was ready to unleash it. The day had finally arrived, our anniversary, a day that should have been filled with love and celebration, but instead felt like a carefully orchestrated stage for the unfolding of a tragedy. I had spent the morning meticulously preparing for the evening, a facade of happiness masking the storm brewing inside me. The house was adorned with balloons and streamers, remnants of our past joy. I forced myself to smile as I set the table, the clinking of plates and the aroma of the dinner wafting through the air. As the evening approached, our friends began to arrive, filling the room with laughter and warmth. They greeted Rachel with enthusiastic hugs and well wishes, and I watched as she beamed with delight. Completely unaware of the impending storm, the atmosphere was festive, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. It felt surreal to witness the celebration while knowing that it would soon all come crashing down. I engaged in small talk, mingling with our friends, and forcing laughter through my gritted teeth. The sound of clinking glasses and cheerful chatter filled the air, and I could hardly focus on anything but the clock ticking down to my moment of truth. I felt the weight of the plan I had been building for weeks. Every detail carefully crafted to ensure maximum impact. I was ready for the truth to emerge and expose the facade that Rachel and Mike had maintained. As we settled down for dinner, I raised my glass for a toast. To love, friendship, and the bonds that unite us, I declared, my voice steady despite the chaos within. Everyone raised their glasses in agreement, unaware of the bitter irony behind my words. The laughter continued, and I could feel the anticipation building within me, tightening like a noose around my heart. This was the moment I had been waiting for. After the dinner plates were cleared, the conversation flowed easily, the air thick with camaraderie. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I decided to bide my time a little longer, allowing the warmth and happiness to settle in before unveiling the truth. The tension was palpable, a silent current weaving its way through the room, and I knew I had to wait for the perfect moment to strike. When the moment felt right, I casually suggested we play a game. How about we share our funniest relationship stories? I said, a sly smile creeping onto my face. Everyone nodded, eager to participate, sharing light-hearted tales that drew laughter and applause. But I had no intention of sharing any funny stories, my goal was far more sinister. As the stories began to wind down, I knew it was time. I looked at Rachel, her eyes sparkling with joy, completely oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. You know, it's funny how relationships can seem perfect on the surface. I said, my voice deliberately casual. The room fell silent, a tension-filled pause that was almost deafening. Everyone turned to look at me, curiosity etched on their faces. I reached for my phone, a chill coursing through me as I prepared to unveil the evidence. Sometimes, though, things are happening behind the scenes that we don't see. I pulled up the messages, my heart racing as I prepared to show our friends the truth. I could feel the weight of their gazes, their anticipation palpable. With a steady hand, I displayed the screen to the group, revealing Rachel's messages to Mike, intimate words and shared secrets that laid bare the extent of their betrayal. The room fell silent as the reality of the situation hit like a thunderclap. I watched as their expressions morphed from confusion to disbelief, then finally settling into shock as the truth sank in. The laughter that had filled the room moments ago was replaced with a heavy, suffocating silence. Rachel's face blanched, her eyes widening in horror as she registered what was happening. "What is this?" she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper, the disbelief evident in her tone. I could see her processing the betrayal, the look of betrayal morphing into one of panic. The truth was out, and there was no escaping the consequences. "Rachel, tell them," I urged, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Tell them about your friendship with Mike." My heart pounded in my chest as I braced myself for the fallout. The air thick with tension as the room held its collective breath. Mike, who had been sitting across from Rachel, looked as though he had just been struck by lightning. His face paled as he glanced from me to Rachel and back again, panic flaring in his eyes. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, desperation dripping from his voice. "You have to believe me." But the desperation in his tone only underscored the gravity of the situation. As the tension escalated, our friends exchanged bewildered glances, their expressions shifting from shock to concern. Whispers began to circulate among them, questions and disbelief flooding the room as they grappled with the betrayal laid bare before them. I could see the discomfort on their faces, the struggle to comprehend how two people they cared about could betray the trust of someone they all respected. The scene unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck, and I found a strange sense of satisfaction in watching Rachel squirm, her carefully constructed facade crumbling around her. I had envisioned this moment countless times, yet nothing could prepare me for the raw emotions playing out in front of me. "Is this true?" One of our friends finally broke the silence, turning to Rachel, their voice trembling. "Did you do this?" The question hung in the air, thick with tension, and I could see Rachel grappling for an explanation, her mind racing to fabricate a response that could salvage her reputation. But there was no way out. The truth was stark and undeniable, and the weight of it crashed down around us. I watched as Rachel's composure began to crack, her defenses crumbling as the reality of the situation unfolded. It was a cathartic moment, a release of the pent-up frustration I had held for so long. I could finally see the extent of the damage she had caused, not just to me but to the lives of everyone in the room. As the discussion turned heated, accusations flew, and the atmosphere shifted from disbelief to confrontation. Friends who had once supported Rachel began to question her, and I could see the cracks in her facade widen. I had set the stage perfectly, allowing the truth to unfurl organically, and now the weight of her betrayal hung heavy in the air. At that moment, I realized that I had reclaimed my power. I had transformed my pain into a weapon, exposing the lies that had woven themselves into the fabric of our lives. As the chaos erupted around us, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The truth was out, and now there was no turning back. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically as Rachel absorbed the full weight of the betrayal laid bare before her. Shock flickered across her face, her eyes darting between me and our friends, desperately searching for any hint of support or understanding. But the realization that her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her was too much to bear. As her friends began to process the truth, the murmurs of disbelief quickly morphed into pointed accusations. "How could you do this, Rachel?" one of them asked, their voice thick with disappointment. "We all trusted you." The group that once felt like a tight-knit family now felt like a pack of wolves closing in, ready to pounce on the exposed prey. Rachel, once so confident and charming, now looked fragile and defeated. Her face flushed a deep crimson as the reality of her actions set in. The narrative she had spun, of being the devoted partner, shattered in an instant, leaving nothing but the cold, hard truth in its wake. There was nowhere for her to hide. In her attempt to defend herself, she opened her mouth, but the words came out as a jumbled mess, lacking coherence and conviction. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the growing din of outrage from our friends. "Mike and I, it was just a mistake." But the weight of her words fell flat, echoing hollowly in the charged air. Mike, sensing the tide turning against him as well, jumped in, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage. "No, wait, it's not what you think. Rachel and I," he began, but he was quickly drowned out by the chorus of our friends' disbelief and disgust. They were not interested in hearing his excuses. Their trust in him had been tainted, just as it had with Rachel. I watched with a sense of grim satisfaction as the tables turned. Friends I had known for years stood united against Rachel, their faces hardening as they turned away from her in disappointment. In that moment, the relationships that had once been solidified through laughter and shared memories felt like mere specters of what they once were. Rachel's reputation as the loyal partner was obliterated, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. As Rachel's defenses crumbled, the tears began to fall. She looked around the room, her once bright eyes now filled with fear and desperation. "Please, don't leave me," she pleaded to a few of our friends, but their expressions hardened. They shook their heads, unable to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the betrayer standing before them. One by one, they began to step back, physically and emotionally distancing themselves from her. I could see the betrayal etched on their faces: anger, disappointment, disbelief. Rachel's downfall was swift and merciless, and I felt a twisted sense of justice wash over me as I witnessed it unfold. The shame of being exposed was washing over her like a cold wave, chilling her to the bone. At that moment, I realized how easily a facade could be dismantled. All the late nights, the stolen moments, the lies she had told to keep her double life hidden, it all unraveled in front of everyone she once called friends. The weight of her choices settled heavily on her shoulders, and I could see her collapsing under the pressure. As the evening wore on, I could feel the tide of anger shifting. I had done what I set out to do, expose the truth. I stood amidst the chaos, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness as I observed the fallout of my actions. Rachel was no longer the person I had loved. She was a shadow of her former self, isolated and alone, grappling with the consequences of her betrayal. I took one last look at her, standing at the center of the room as her friends began to disperse. The weight of their judgment hanging heavily in the air. She was left to fend for herself, trapped in a world of her own making. I had no sympathy left for her, the compassion I once held was extinguished, replaced by a sense of closure. With a deep breath, I turned on my heel and walked away from the scene. The sound of muffled voices faded into the background as I stepped outside, the cool night air washing over me like a balm. The stars above twinkled serenely, a stark contrast to the turmoil I had just left behind. I could feel a lightness in my chest, the burden of betrayal beginning to lift as I moved further away from the chaos. I knew that I wouldn't look back. This was the end of a chapter, a painful yet necessary conclusion to a relationship tainted by deceit. Rachel's choices had led her to this moment, and I had no desire to be a part of the aftermath. I felt a surge of determination within me. I was free. Free from the shackles of betrayal, from the weight of expectations that had bound me to a life filled with lies. As I drove away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for the future. I was ready to embrace a new beginning, unencumbered by the shadows of my past. I had taken back my power, and in that moment, I resolved to build a life that reflected my true self, untainted by the betrayal that had once threatened to consume me. I had avenged my heart, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my identity. The world ahead felt vast and filled with possibilities, and I was determined to embrace it. Leaving behind the ruins of a love that had once seemed so perfect.